Okay, are we here? I cannot see anybody right now, and I thought I was live before, and it just was not working. So we're here. I'm live. Yay! I'm so glad to be here with you guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. That was not my plan. But I wanted to start off by asking you a question. For those of you who are joining me live, please feel free to leave comments. I'll get back to them after this video. But I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever felt so out of control in your own life that it's like you're watching from the outside? For most of my life, I feel like that's the way I lived my life. I lived in this constant state of never feeling like I was quite in control, never knowing what was exactly going to happen. And I want to introduce myself. My name is Britney Renae Thompson. I am the author of God-Minded, Living God-Focused in a Me-Focused World. And I am really, really passionate about helping Christian women achieve things that they never thought possible by overcoming the limiting beliefs in their life. I'm here to introduce to you God-Minded, the book, but I'm also a speaker and a coach, and I have a desire to see women's lives transformed. So I'm here to do this for you. I'm here to share with you something that will just be something more than just a book introduction. I don't just want to give you something that says, hey, go order my book on Amazon, go do this, go do that. I want to give you a reason. Hi, Yvonne. I'm so glad that you're here. For those of you who are just joining in, the question that I posed at the beginning of this video is, have you ever felt so out of control in your own life that it's like you were watching from the outside? I have. And because I'm a speaker and an author and a coach, I want to give you something. I want to show you something more than just an introduction to my book. But with a topic this big, we can of course only cover a certain amount of things. We can only cover this much. When I need you to understand this much, I need you to understand more than what I'm sharing with you today. But the first thing I think is really important for you to understand how God-Minded came into existence is to hear my story, hear where it came from. So for me, dieting was a way of life. From the age 11, I learned how to manipulate my body by dieting, by watching the food that I ate, because I was curvier than most girls my age. I was curvier for my entire life. But in my mid-teens, I was an expert at dieting. Hi, Ashley. But the problem is that I tried to change my body. As I was trying to change my body, I began to dislike who I was. I began to dislike the person that I was. And so by college, my eating was less and less frequent as I desperately tried to look like everybody else, these stick thin, beautiful women that I looked at and said, why can't I be like her? Why can't my body be different? Why can't I feel confident in my own body? And every single day, I would eat maybe one meal a day, work out twice a day, because I so desperately wanted to be like everybody else. I so desperately wanted to be loved and be accepted and be liked. And it did a number on my self-esteem and my self-worth. It was partway through my first year of college when my first binging episode happened. And I was mortified. I was mortified. It started out really, really slowly, maybe once a month, once every other month. But progressively, it got worse. It was this thing that I could no longer control. I couldn't control my actions when it came to my eating. And it was like I would be looking down on myself as I'm stuffing food into my face. And I kept questioning myself, is my self-control gone? What's wrong with me? Is there something that I have done, something that I can change? And in my early 20s is really when my self-worth just was at an all-time low. Because no longer was I able to control the way that I was eating. I would diet for months at a time, then I would fall off the wagon and binge for months at a time. It was terrible. But during this time is when I met a guy, and he radically impacted my life in a very negative way. He was a football player. He was popular, good looking, and a professing believer. So of course, why not? Why not be in a relationship with this guy? But we quickly began spending all of our time together and fell in love. And as we grew to have a relationship, we got engaged. But I started noticing that the way that he was talking to me, the way that he acted towards me was not the way that I had seen good relationships be done in the past. And I felt like I was hiding in my own life. I couldn't be who I was created to be. I couldn't take hold of that person that God had created me to be. And my disordered eating was just becoming worse and worse. I was losing my sense of identity, and I felt more empty than ever. I was hiding in my own life, and I gave up myself to gain acceptance from this man. I gave up myself to gain acceptance from my peers, and I felt like I was drowning. My life became his life. He manipulated every aspect of my life. He was verbally and emotionally abusive. He probably would have become physically abusive if I did not make that very clear that that is not something I would put up with. But he became controlling of my entire life. I had no sense of who I was. And after almost 3 years into the relationship, as I was home for the holidays without him for the first time in a long time, on my drive home, I was driving home and I was just sobbing because I just didn't feel like my life had any purpose. For a very split second considered, is my life even worth living at this point? But on that drive, God got my attention. And I didn't audibly hear anything, but the thought was as clear as day in my mind. Britney, will you give him up for me? And you can't have both. And in that moment, a spark was lit inside of me. It was hope. It was freedom. It was purpose and so much more. And I ended up ending that relationship pretty soon after by leaving my ring on the table and just walking out. And God began healing me. He began building in me an identity that was built in him, in his purpose for my life. And he lit the flame of my calling again to share hope and freedom with hurting women, because I knew what that was like to be a hurting woman in this world. And my life became better. I began seeing myself again and knowing who I was and knowing what things I liked and the person I wanted to become. And yet I still had this huge thing, which was my eating disorder, and I was hiding it from everyone around me. I still clung to this hope that God could fix in me what was broken and that I would get freedom from this eventually. But it didn't change. In fact, it got much, much worse. So at the beginning of 2017, I was at the worst of my eating disorder. I was binging at least 3 to 4 times a week. No matter what I tried to control it, I never could. I could not control it. And one night in late 2017, as I sat home in my recliner with a large pizza on my lap, I sobbed. Netflix was on the screen. I remember this very clearly, asking me, "Are you still there? Are you still watching?" And I had this question come in my mind that was like, am I still here? Am I still me? Or has this become me? Has this become my identity? And no matter what I tried, I was just in this place of desperation where I felt like this thing, I finally have freedom in so many areas of my life. I finally feel like I got my life back. And yet this huge thing is stealing my joy. It's stealing my hope. It's stealing my identity. And I cried out to God again in my despair that night, praying for a solution to my problem with food. And this night was different. This night was the breaking point for me, because for the first time, I knew that I could not fix this on my own. And believe me, I had tried over and over again. That night, in God's providence, an ad popped up on my Facebook for a woman who claimed that she could heal any eating disorder using only your brain. And I was intrigued, to say the least, that she could help me get rid of my eating disorder just using my brain. So I hired her. I spent way more money than I should have. because I was desperate. I needed this. And as I started her program, I began getting freedom from food immediately. And although she was teaching me things that just didn't add up in my head, that didn't sit right with me, I could see that I was getting freedom. I could see that I wasn't binging anymore. I wasn't struggling with all of these food thoughts constantly being in my head. And as I got further into her program, I started realizing the reason that this works is because that the principles I was learning corresponded with verses that I knew growing up. They corresponded with things that I believed my entire life, but never put into practice in my own life. And I got more and more freedom. And the reason that I think it works so well is because God created our brains to function in a very specific way, in conjunction with a maintenance plan that is called renewing your mind. And that is how God-minded was born. I know that all Christians believe this. All Christians believe that we should be renewing our minds as believers, right? I mean, it's something we've been taught from the time that we were tiny, tiny kids, that we should be renewing our mind. We read verses like Romans 12, where it talks about our minds and the importance of renewing them and having a life that is renewed. Yet, most of us don't know how to have a good or consistent maintenance plan of practicing renewing our mind. And as God-minded was born, it came as the answer to the problem in my head, that all the things she was teaching me didn't line up with what I believed as a Christian, as a biblical Christian. But I started realizing how well the principles I was learning lined up with the Word of God. And so I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours researching and coming up with solutions and coming up with a very specific practice for renewing my mind and how to teach other people to do that as well. And that is what God-minded is. So I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm so glad that you want to meet me and that you want to learn about God-minded. And I would love to spend some time getting really deep into this book with each one of you. But I want to share with you today a simple 4-step process that I lay out in God-minded. So the purpose of God-minded was to break down the stereotypes of that we've seen in our lives as Christians, that we believe that maybe mindfulness and meditation are some weird, like, Eastern religion things, but for us, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be renewing our minds. But what is renewing your mind? So God-minded was written to answer that question. And it goes through from the point of we all believe lies in our lives. There's certain lies that we believe that hold us captive, that we need to break free from. The second chapter gets into the foundation, the biblical foundation for why it's important to renew our mind and why God gave it as a commandment to us. And then the third chapter talks about our brains and how scientifically our brains are put together to function in a certain way, to be able to have control over things that really other animals don't have control of, but we get to have control of. And then the fourth chapter gets into a thankfulness practice and gets into the really practical side of what renewing your mind looks like. And then the next chapter teaches you about the process that I teach women to help them get transformative power in their life, to help them get freedom and hope that they never thought possible. And that 4-step process is one that I want to share with you today. So the 4-step process is, first of all, to see your thoughts. Second of all, say your thoughts. Third, speak truth. And fourth, set your mind. And I didn't come to these steps as just a cute way of saying things so that people will buy a book. No, I did this using the principles that the Bible teaches as a practical way of renewing our minds as believers in this world. And I believe that God desires for each one and every single one of us to live a life of freedom and purpose. And living that life does take a God-minded focus and intentional steps forward. Seriously, it will transform your life. And these 4 steps, I want to dive a little bit deeper in them. I know that we're getting to the 15-minute mark, And maybe people aren't going to keep watching, but in case you do, I think that this is so practical. Hi, Penelope. I'm so glad you're here. And this four-step process that I teach in God Minded has the ability to transform your life. It really does. It has the ability to take you from desperate and broken to hope-filled and free. And I believe that this process can transform any woman's life. For me, my big problem, my big issue was an eating disorder. It was overcoming that food mindset that constantly bombarded my thoughts at every turn. For you, it may be insecurity or doubt or not feeling like you're enough or feeling like you're insignificant in this world or whatever it is. This can help you. This can transform your life. It can make you into the person that God created you to be, a woman who's filled with purpose and freedom. So the first step is to see your thoughts. And this is a lot of people are like, what? What do you mean see your thoughts? See your thoughts is just becoming aware that you have thoughts in your head and that they can be changed. Okay? It's that simple. Seeing your thoughts makes you be aware of the thoughts that are in your head, allows you the ability to do the second step, which is to say your thoughts out loud. And this is a process that really, really is really awkward for most people. For me, this was a process that just made me cringe in my innermost being. I hated it. I did not like doing it, but it is what we need as believers. The Bible talks often about confessing with our mouths, using our mouths, confession as a way of regeneration and renewal. And saying your thoughts, which is the second step, is what we need in order to change our thoughts. And so for me, most of my life, I did not believe that it was possible to change my thoughts. I just thought whatever I think is how I am and what I need to be and all of these different things, but it wasn't true. I have the ability, just like you, to change the thoughts that you believe. And so the second thought is to say your thoughts. And this process is really an uncovering practice, because when I first started, I would have these thoughts that would come up that would be, okay, I need to go eat lots of food right now, right? That's a really weird thought, and it really has nothing to do with anything. There's no purpose behind it other than go eat food. But as I would dig deeper and deeper and deeper, it would give me the ability, as I would say them out loud, okay, I need to eat food because I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now, or I'm feeling emotional, or I need to do something else that I don't want to do, so therefore I'm going to see my thoughts and say my thoughts out loud, and all of these things that would come up, but it would eventually come down to the identity piece. And as I teach women and I connect with women, it's so easy for us to say, well, this thought isn't connected to my identity, it's just something that I do. But all of our thoughts are connected in some way to our identity. All of them are at the heart of who we are. And some of them are throwaway thoughts. Some of them don't really have any purpose. But as we dig deeper and deeper and deeper, we can see what the real identity thought. For me, what I found my biggest identity thought was I am unloved and I am unworthy. And those two things affected my entire life. So I would go to food for comfort. I would go to food for help. I would go to food. Instead of running to God where I needed to run, I would run to those things. The third step is to speak truth. And this is a very important step in this process, because as you say your thoughts out loud, as you say your thoughts and they dig into the heart of your insecurity and they dig into the heart of your desperation, you need to be able to speak truth over those lies. Because the truth is, I was not unworthy. The truth is, I was not unloved. But I needed to have truth that overshadowed those lies, that took over those lies in my head. And so I would speak truth from God's word that said, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old things have passed away. All things have become new. or verses that said that I was loved, that Jesus gave his life for me, that I was significant, that I was important, that I was somebody that God loved more than anything in this world, enough to send his son to die in my place. And those truth thoughts are the truth that we build our foundation on. So for most of our lives, we've believed that our thoughts are a truth foundation to build our lives upon. And I know that I'm not the only one there, because I've talked to hundreds, maybe thousands of women who said the same thing, like, yeah, but this is true of me. This is who I am. And I say, but who's telling you that? Are you telling yourself that, or is somebody in your life telling you that? Is God telling you that? Because for me, I had to come to the conclusion that my thoughts lie to me on a daily basis, that my innermost thoughts are not nice, that my thoughts say things to me that I would never in a million years say to another human being, and yet I did. And so speaking truth is taking the truth of God's word, or taking the truth from somebody that you trust and love, and placing it on top of, in front of your thoughts that are tearing you down. And then the fourth step to this process is to set your mind. And this is an intentional act of deciding to believe something even when you may not believe it. The Bible talks about setting our mind on things that are above and not on things that are beneath. And so setting your mind is this intentional act of deciding that what God says about me is more important than what I believe about myself. What God says about me is my true identity, not the things that I have held myself accountable for my entire life. And this is what I want to leave you with today, because I believe that every single one of you are created for purpose, that you were created as a glorious creation of a loving God. And he has a purpose, and he has a plan for your life. And God-minded is my love song, and God's love song to Christian women who are hurting in their life, who need freedom, who need hope, who need to know what it's like to grasp freedom and live a life of purpose and passion. So that is what God-minded is about. I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions or comments, please just put them in the comment box. And we will end this video. I want to let you know that if you want more information, if you want to get a copy of God Minded, I did put them in show notes on the old Facebook Live that I didn't actually get started because of technical difficulties, but I will add them into the comment section, or I'll change the description of this video to give you some more information. But you can find me online at www.britneythompson.com, and I am a coach and a speaker, and I have some really awesome resources for people above and beyond God Minded. I mean, I would love for you to buy a copy of God Minded and to really embrace the truth of who God says you are, embrace the act of renewing our minds as laid out in the Bible to get a transformed and free life. But if you want to sign up for my newsletter, I also have an awesome freebie on my website for people that's just really practical, renewing your mind processes. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but if you do, I would love to answer them. So I don't see any questions in the comment box right now, but I just want to give a couple shout outs. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Daniele. I don't know how you say your name, but I'm so thankful for this group and for you giving us a platform to share our books and share what God has given us. Ashley, I'm glad you're on. She's my sister-in-law, and she's wonderful, and I love her. April, Penelope, for those who watch, for those who will be watching, please connect with me. I would love to get to know you and to share more with you about what it really means to live a free life. And God Minded is available on Amazon for purchase. So I'm going to end this live video here, and I will hopefully be connecting with many of you later on. So bye.